All right, let's go on and get started. Good Monday morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this week's weather briefing. It's Monday, October 25th, 2021. So I do believe that means this will be the last weather briefing in the month of October. I am pleased to welcome new CENTER Maine meteorologist, soon to be meteorologist moving down to Hartford, Connecticut. Hartford, Connecticut. Geez, I cannot speak this morning. Soon to be moving to Hartford, Connecticut, meteorologist Ryan Breton. And Ryan, I will let you have the floor, sir. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for inviting me. And real quickly, little background. I graduated in 2016. I'm originally from New Hampshire, and I've been working in New England since I graduated. But actually, I used to run these briefings my junior and senior year, I think. Dan Tomaso, when he worked for the department, he organized these. He was in the position kind of that Rob Leidick is in now. And when he left to go to Harrisburg, he actually handed it off to Campus Weather Service and said, would you guys like to run the briefings and organize them and whatnot? And glad to see it still running and cool to be on the other side of it. So I thought I'd start actually with just a couple of little statistics here. And if you can't see, let me know. I'm not the best at screen sharing on Mac, which is what I'm using right now, but I'll try to get this out of the way. It's been a warm stretch of weather, and just for a little perspective, thought I'd share where I am in Portland, Maine. It was our second warmest meteorological summer on record. And in State College, it was the sixth warmest. And the period of record in both places is a little different. Reliable temperature records here in Portland only go back to 1940, so not as long of a record as State College. But actually, in both places, 2020 was the record warmest meteorological summer. So thought that was interesting. It certainly has been a very warm couple of years. And I would think climate change certainly playing a role in that, especially here with warmer than average nights. It was the 10th warmest September on record in Portland and the 14th warmest September on record in State College. And that warmth has rolled right into this month. Month to date, temperature rankings all across the Northeast. These are through Saturday. That was the latest day I could grab them. Top 5 warmest in most climate sites all across the Northeast. And if you've never used this tool, it's a great one. It's from the Northeast Regional Climate Center. I actually think it's run by the Southeast Regional Climate Center, but that's how I found it. Climate Perspectives. If you Google that, you can find that resource there. And quickly, before we get into kind of our current weather, one thing I wanted to mention that's pretty fascinating and certainly is impacting my forecasting here in New England, and to a lesser extent, obviously, the forecasting in Pennsylvania, given you're landlocked in Happy Valley. But sea surface temperatures are anomalously warm from off the coast of Long Island, southern New England, all the way up here into the Gulf of Maine. This is a great resource from the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, which takes the average sea surface temperature of the Gulf of Maine, and it's at record warm levels. This was from earlier this month, the last time they took this observation. But even still, the buoy in Portland Harbor here has a water temperature of, I think, 58, or at least it did yesterday, which I know to those of you who go to beaches in Jersey or down in the Outer Banks, that sounds freezing cold. But there are some Octobers where that temperature is already in the lower 50s. So I actually happen to think the warm sea surface temperatures may be playing a role in this developing coastal storm and nor'easter that we're going to be seeing on the East Coast this week. So here's the satellite imagery. Love this page from the E-wall. You can see as it transitions from infrared to more of a visible view during the day. And I'll pause it on the latest image here. Actually starting to see some sunshine poke out in the warm sector in Happy Valley. Here in New England, stratiform rain, it's overcast, it's cool, kind of a Monday feel. And then you can see out west, I'll loop this again, big swirl off the northwest coast with the next system that's coming in there. And obviously, if you were watching the Sunday night game last night out in San Francisco, not the weather, I'm sure, that people who bought those tickets months ago we're envisioning. But the first system last night, as I'm sure a lot of you know, dropped several tornadoes, parts of Missouri into Illinois. There were several debris signatures on radar last night. I wasn't able to closely follow it, but clearly a lot of damage there. And I'll refresh this. So far, SPC with 15 tornado reports, 39 wind reports. And obviously that system moving east today and gets a little bit more interesting for the mid-Atlantic and perhaps all the way up into central Pennsylvania. Seems like the highest risk for anything significant would be more over the mid-Atlantic, a slight risk, level 2 out of 5 there today, and tornado risk centered along the Virginia, North Carolina border as well. Wind potential, though, does extend up into Pennsylvania, and as does hail. And one thing that you want to see when you're in the warm sector out ahead of a storm is sunshine if you want storms. And great view on the visible satellite over Pennsylvania this morning of the valley fog. And I didn't want to refresh this image because I've been checking the weather stem camera out looking over Beaver Stadium, and you couldn't see Mount Nittany a few minutes ago, but let's see if we can see it now. It's starting to emerge a little bit. So the valley fog lifting and thinning, and if you're on campus, it's nice and sunny. So good looking morning in State College. Here are the latest observations. These are from 14Z, so might be, no, that's current. So 50-50 at the airport at University Park. So clearly in the fog there, but already a southerly wind up over the Laurel Highlands. Dew points are pretty low though, west of the ridges. Dew point in Pittsburgh is in the upper 40s. Dew point in Johnstown is 48. But in the warm sector in southeastern Pennsylvania, dew points starting to get into the lower 60s as you get down toward the greater Philadelphia area. Only a dew point of 54 in Harrisburg. So if you want severe weather, that's not really what you want to see. However, the HER, and we have the benefit of just seeing the new 12Z run, does try to advect somewhat higher dew points north for a brief time this afternoon. So maybe, especially southeast of State College around, say, Selinsgrove and Harrisburg, the dew points could pop to about 60. But clearly where the dew points are much higher through the mid-Atlantic, that's where the potential for any severe weather will be somewhat higher today. Here's a look at the vorticity in the upper air pattern here. I'll zoom in a little bit. Oh, maybe I won't. Weather Bell wanted to readjust it on me there. Here we go. So we have two pretty vigorous short waves, one that's digging into the Ohio Valley now. That's obviously got the warm sector pushing up into Pennsylvania out ahead of that cold front tonight. And then another big short wave coming into the Pacific Northwest and into California too, obviously responsible for all of the rain out that way. And we'll advance this along, and you can see that as we get into tonight, that first short wave starts to move out over the mid-Atlantic off the Delmarva, and then that's when the nor'easter will start to form on the right-hand side of this area of vorticity here off the mid-Atlantic coast, off south of southern New England. And then this very slowly moves and really gets cut off from the main flow. So this here is Wednesday morning, early Wednesday morning. This is 8 a.m. Wednesday. And you've got a closed off upper low here south of New England. State College starts to get some better flow here. You kind of get into the ridge as you get into Wednesday afternoon and Thursday. So while here in New England, we'll be dealing with rain and wind, the weather actually will be improving in central Pennsylvania ahead of the next system, which by Thursday morning is digging down through the Mississippi Valley and then starts to head east as we get into Halloween weekend. And this is the view on the European, but the GFS operational model is fairly similar. So that's the upper air look. Let's do, maybe I closed it off, but I can pull it up really quickly. Let's just do a look at the general surface forecast from WPC. And you can see this morning, warm front lifting north of State College. Although, as I mentioned, the dew points are kind of meager on the south side of that warm front. It's not as juicy as it could be for sure. And then tonight, that cold front starts to approach western PA. comes through the State College area very early tomorrow morning. So if you have any opportunity for storms in State College, it's probably around or just after sunset tonight. So not ideal timing, and obviously shorter daylight this time of the year doesn't play in your favor for maximum heating, but pretty vigorous system nonetheless. And then a secondary low starts to form off the coast. And by tomorrow evening, this is 0Z Wednesday, WPC has this as a 988 millibar low south of Nantucket. And there will be a little trough hanging back to the west, which will bring some showers back into central PA. But clearly the biggest impact from this storm will be southern New England and perhaps up into the southern part of my area tomorrow night into Wednesday morning. Strong northeast wind, and then the storm just sits there until probably Wednesday afternoon. It does look like there's a ridge of high pressure up over Quebec, and that may start to build south and help push this along by Thursday. And then the next system is on its heels as you get into later in the week. So before we get into the later in the week system, let's take a closer look at the severe threat today. And this is just basing it off the HER, which has just come out. We'll go to the simulated reflectivity. And again, it's good to see that out ahead of this system, I'll zoom this view out a little bit. There is some sunshine, but there are, thicker clouds as you get back into Ohio, and even some clouds spreading into western PA. But where the sun breaks out in southeastern Pennsylvania, parts of Maryland, Virginia, down into the Carolinas, you'll get some decent heating for this time of the year. This is the current look at 15Z and doing a decent job there. By 18Z, a line of showers coming through West Virginia, starting to enter into western PA. And then you start to see the more discrete cells popping ahead of the front in parts of Virginia and North Carolina. And obviously it's any of those discrete cells which would have the higher chance of maybe becoming a bit stronger and rotating out ahead of any QLCS type cells that would come through later in the day. This is 20Z, so 4 o'clock this afternoon, showers in the Laurel Highlands, and also a secondary line forming with the main front coming through Ohio at that point. But when that makes it into central PA, you will have already had likely some showers, downpours, and a few thunderstorms. So in central PA, I would think the highest risk for anything severe would be, say, in that 3 to 10 p.m. window. And one thing that is interesting here is that these storms do look like they'll have more of a southwest to northeast motion. And some of the better storms that don't fizzle out as they make it into Happy Valley seem to come from that direction. So maybe you have that going for you. Could be some gusty winds, perhaps some hail, and again, a non-zero chance for a spin-up tornado, but the chances for that are probably higher through the mid-Atlantic. And for a general idea, one product that I like to look at it is the updraft helicity swaths. This basically shows where there's the potential for the helicity that a thunderstorm can tap into, tilt the updraft, rotate it, that type of thing. And you see that there really isn't much shading here in Pennsylvania. The odds of anything more likely to rotate probably to the south. And that pretty much matches up with what the SPC has here, with a higher tornado risk as you get down into Virginia and the Carolinas. Then we'll switch from, actually, before we do that, I'll go back to the HER, if I can find it. Here it is. And one thing of note, once this comes through, the dew points will be dropping so that by tomorrow midday, dew points up around, say, Bradford could be in the 30s, dew points in State College down into the mid 40s. And that drier air will probably mean somewhat better weather as you get farther away from that storm system. It'll probably still be fairly cloudy in a lot of Pennsylvania tomorrow. But if we look at the 12-hour precip, we'll go through tomorrow night, a lot of the heaviest of the rain lifts up to the north and east of State College, more along that trough that kind of hangs back behind the low that forms. So we'll go into the surface forecast from the European. I have to change my domain here. I'm used to just looking at New England, which usually cuts most of you off. So we'll go to the northeast view here. And again, this is in the warm sector this afternoon. Storms come through tonight. And then there's that secondary low that forms south of New England. And the Euro gets really wound up with it. It's actually less amplified than it was when I was forecasting yesterday morning. And that said, there's, in my experience, at least the last, say, 10 months or so, the European has had a bias to over amplify storms as they hit the coast and affect New England. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we get into the winter. The GFS, on the other hand, was considerably weaker with the storm when I was forecasting yesterday. Let me go ahead here. We'll do this at 18Z tomorrow. And there are still considerable differences in the sensible impact between the European and GFS at the surface. The European has one consolidated area of low pressure. The GFS kind of has a double barrel look to it and isn't quite as strong. So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves. And if the GFS tends to be more right, it actually wouldn't shock me, which might not be a popular thing to say, given the popularity of the European model. But I saw this back through last spring and last winter too. But we'll just have to see how this kind of pans out. Either way, for Pennsylvania, you're on the western side, and you can see even the GFS has that trough look with the kinked isobars all the way back up through the Great Lakes. So there will be periods of rain tomorrow, likely a little bit heavier in eastern PA, and both guidance products have that. We'll look at the 24-hour precip now, which goes from 0Z tonight through 0Z tomorrow night. And you can see eastern PA just gets drenched. Both the European and GFS with the suggestion of 2 to 3 inches of rain. And as we've seen in recent events, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary to get more than that. And I mentioned the above average sea surface temperatures, more moisture available. And with that trough kind of hanging back to focus some of the precipitation, probably likely to have some amounts tomorrow topping 4 inches of rain just during the day tomorrow. And there are flash flood watches. Love this image on the e-wall, by the way, that have been issued for parts of New Jersey, the New York City metro area, Long Island, over into Connecticut. Those are the green shaded areas. And for good reason. When you get that much rain, the ground is very saturated. It's been a very wet summer and early fall in this region. Flooding is definitely a concern in those areas as well. Then as we go into tomorrow night, the storm kind of swells up south of New England and starts to pull away. So it'll be more of a Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and perhaps southern Maine type event then. Although even at that point, I'll switch this to 48-hour precip totals now. There are fairly significant differences between the GFS, which is drier in parts of New England, and the European, which is much wetter. So if the GFS were to verify, this really isn't much of a problem for parts of New England. Maybe isolated locations would see some poor drainage and flash flooding. But if the European is right, with amounts topping 3 or 4 inches from New Hampshire's seacoast down through the Boston area and then into parts of Connecticut, flash flooding would be a concern too. One thing that's fueling the train of moisture in the European projection is this low-level jet, which is pretty intense tomorrow, especially on the European. The GFS has this feature too, but because the storm center moves away quickly on the GFS as opposed to the Euro, it's not quite the same fetch. But either way, that type of moisture feed would promote very heavy rain and likely some wind gusts topping 50 miles per hour. I don't want to use the old wind swath map, but for fun, let's just look. Again, don't forecast using this, but for fun, let's just allow ourselves to indulge. And the European product here has gusts over 60 to 70 miles per hour. There's only one time in my experience this has been very reliable, and it was October 2017. So one time out of dozens of storms. I wouldn't hang my hat on that, but I suppose it shows the potential, as does the GFS too. So if I were forecasting for southern New England, sure, I would forecast gusts over 50 miles per hour. And I suppose you can't rule out some higher gusts, but it's more often than not, this product overdoes wind gusts. So for Pennsylvania in that time frame, once you get beyond tomorrow, actually the weather turns very nice for Wednesday and Thursday. We'll show you the upper air moisture here and 700 millibar relative humidity. You can see clearly high values through tomorrow morning, and then some drier air does try to punch south on Wednesday afternoon, and that should translate to at least partial sunshine, if not mostly sunny skies by Wednesday afternoon. So the lower right panel here is the European's projection for total cloud cover, but that low cloud cover tends to erode a bit. And Wednesday afternoon, you should see increasing sunshine. Look at the 850 millibar temperature, which I like to use kind of as a guide if you get good mixing. 10 Celsius isn't chilly for this time of the year. So it's not a cold air mass moving in on the backside of this storm. And that would suggest that Wednesday afternoon temperatures, especially with a downsloping wind southeast of the mountain, should rise into the mid and upper 60s. Probably more of a struggle northwest of State College, likely staying in the 60s there. But you still have a downslope flow on Thursday with some sunshine. And again, should be a decently mild day for this time of the year, probably around 60 in State College and getting into the mid and upper 60s in the places with a decent downslope. So Wednesday and Thursday are your days to enjoy this week. And then we'll broaden the picture back out because everything changes for the end of the week. On Thursday evening, here comes the next system. I showed you the 500 millibar look at it earlier, but it starts to move along. I'm going to have to switch this to the 0Z Euro. By 8 o'clock Thursday evening, we have rain breaking out into parts of Ohio, West Virginia, still dry in Pennsylvania. And again, there could be some severe weather over the southeast on the warm side of the pretty vigorous upper level low. Then as we get into Friday morning, starting to get rain developing in parts of southwestern Pennsylvania, the Laurel Highlands, probably still dry at wake up time Friday morning in northeastern Pennsylvania. And just for clarity's sake, we'll check the GFS timing on this too. And they're fairly similar, a little bit of a different look to the GFS. It's not as broad with the area of low pressure back to the west, but similar timing with rain developing Friday morning. And then a fairly wet day Friday with off and on showers, downpours, and maybe even some rumbles of thunder. And from this system alone, I'll go back to a mid-Atlantic view here. We keep the rain going off and on into Friday night and continued showers on Saturday. So for this 48-hour period from 0Z Friday to 0Z Sunday, could get another 1 to 2 inches of rain and upslope locations through the highlands, if the European model is correct here. And then the GFS is a bit more generous with the precipitation. Either way, it looks pretty wet. And unfortunately for those students who have Friday night Halloween plans, you might have to bring some rain gear with that costume, unless we can speed up the warm front part of this system. Probably turns more showery Saturday night or Friday night, I should say, if this projection is exactly right. So there's some optimism if you're hitting the town Friday night for Halloween that things will be in decent shape. And then Saturday looks showery, likely pretty cool. And then beyond that, we'll go back to the upper look here. There is definitely a shift in the pattern next week. And you can see that here on the Euro, and the GFS is fairly similar too. Lower heights, chillier air mass, 850 millibar temperatures, dipping below 0 Celsius as we get into early next week with a cooler pocket of air moving in. So for the first time in a while, let me go to the European look here too. It looks like next week could be a fairly cool week. And for the first time in a while, the outlook from the Climate Prediction Center actually suggesting below average temperatures. It's been a mild 5-6 week stretch, and it looks like that may change as we head into next week, which is the beginning of November. So with all that said, bottom line is you've got threat for some thunderstorms in central PA this afternoon into this evening. You end up with some decent weather for tomorrow, or I should say for Wednesday and Thursday, and then more rain for the end of the week. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. I feel like I'm going on and on here. But thank you again for having me. I hope I lived up to the expectations. It's been a while since I've watched one of these, but an honor to be invited, and thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ryan. And frankly, I thought you did just a fine job. For those of you joining us on Zoom, you're more than welcome to drop questions in the chat or the Q&A. I'm monitoring both of those. And to the handful of folks that are watching us on YouTube, I have the YouTube chat open as well. So feel free to ask questions there, and I will relay them to Ryan.
Good to see some sun in Happy Valley.
Yeah, we just need to get it across the rest of State College.
Right.
It was really thick this morning.
Yeah, I saw that. And I'm hoping for good weather on November. Let's see, what is it? November 13th? I'm coming back to town November 13th if all goes well for the Michigan game. So fingers crossed it's not raining, or I will really regret my decision given how poorly the football team did over the weekend.
Yeah, I was talking with my folks this weekend, and my sister and I both had the same reaction. We didn't know that you could have 9 overtimes.
It is crazy.
We didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, this new overtime structure is probably something that'll be amended again, I would think. It's not, I'm not a fan of it at all.
I also couldn't help but notice the little bullseye of severe weather forecast for the Mid-Atlantic. The 5% tour, that includes my house.
I was thinking that. I know you're from down that way, so
yeah,
it's gonna be an interesting afternoon for them, I think.
Yeah, Alamance County is in that bullseye. So woohoo!
I'm definitely unimpressed by the dew points in Pennsylvania, though. I mean, I suppose there could be a severe storm or two, but down that way is going to be the place to be if you want bad storms today.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we're able to instigate anything with the low 50s, upper 40s.
Right.
I am in the wrong window. I am not seeing any queries. So I suppose with that, Ryan, unless you have something else, we can let you go.
Thank you for having me, Christopher. Keep up the good work. And like I said, it's funny to be on the other side of this because I organized these like you did. Let's see, 6 years ago.
Wow.
Gary, 5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Ryan, for doing these. Hope to have you back at some point in the future.
Take care. Thanks, Christopher.
This weather briefing and all other weather briefings are streamed on YouTube and archived in the same place at youtube.com/Campus Weather Service. And I look forward to having all of you join us next week as we will have AccuWeather senior meteorologist Mike Dole to present the next Ken Reeves Memorial Weather Briefing. That'll be at the same time, same place on Zoom, 10:15 a.m. Eastern. I look forward to seeing all of you next week. Have a great week, everybody.